Hi, this is U.S. Senator Marco Rubio from Florida, and this is this week's edition of Constituent Mailbox. As you know, every week we reach into the mailbox, we grab our emails and our letters, we pick a few and we read them on the air, particularly if it's things that people are starting to talk a lot about. And this week we've gotten a lot of emails about the upcoming debt limit. You all remember what that is. That basically is the credit limit the United States have. It is the amount of money we are allowed to owe, and that's something that's in our laws. And so what happens is, as the government continues to borrow money, the debt limit keeps getting raised. And we understand that there's always been a debt limit, and to some point the government's always going to have some level of public debt. Here's the problem, though. The problem is the debt is now growing so fast that it threatens our future. It's getting close to, we just raised it a year and a half ago, and now they're back for more. And what really bothers me is that there's no plan in place to deal with the debt limit. So let me read some of the emails from people that I think are less than happy with my position on it, and some are unfortunately a bit misinformed, but we'll use this as an opportunity to clear that up. So let me read the first email. It comes from Thomas in West Palm Beach, Florida. He writes, "I hope and pray that you're not considering voting against raising the debt limit. As the President has pointed out, this is to pay debts already incurred. Your last vote on this resulted in a downgrading of our nation's credit rating and further damaged our struggling economy." Lawrence in Port St. Lucie, Florida also emailed us. He has even stronger opinions. He writes, "It is my understanding that your name is included in the list of Republican zealots who are threatening to hold the nation hostage over the upcoming debt limit increase unless your absurd demands are met that we all cave into your twisted, bigoted, and wildly radical agenda. I can only encourage you in the strongest possible terms to press home this suicidal effort to the fullest extent possible and with all your energies so as to hasten the day when this country will finally and thankfully be rid of your hatefully, selfish, and intellectually bankrupt caucus and once again allowed to move forward at long last to achieve the progressive ideals of prosperity for all, not just for the privileged few." Well, I don't think Lawrence is very happy with my position on the debt limit. So let me clear some things up. Let's address Lawrence's first. Lawrence, I'm not quite sure what you mean by our absurd request. Here's my request. My request is that we're going to raise the debt limit again. Let's have a plan in place so we don't have to do this again in the future. My request is fine. Well, let's raise the debt limit one more time, but let's put in place a plan to begin to balance our budget. Because I think all of us realize that if we continue to spend more money than we take in, we will go bankrupt. The country will be hurt. We're going to have a debt crisis in America. That's my demands. Now, I'm not sure what's so radical or bigoted about that concern, but I would say it's probably one that's shared from the vast majority of Americans. Even the president claims that he wants to do this. The problem is he never puts forward a plan to do it. So the only thing I'm asking for is, if we're going to raise the debt limit, fine, I understand that we have to raise the debt limit one more time, but let's not raise the debt limit until we have a plan in place to begin to bring our budgets into balance over the next decade. That's not an unreasonable request. Here's what I do think is unreasonable. What I do think is unreasonable is to continue to borrow and spend money without any regard for the future. What I do think is unreasonable is continue to borrow $34,000 a second to fund our government. What I do think is unreasonable is to continue to borrow 40 cents out of every dollar the government is spending. In fact, think about what this means. What they're saying to you is that unless we're allowed to borrow more money in the tune of another $1 trillion, the government can't function. What that basically says is that we are functioning on credit. If you were living off your credit cards or your home equity loan, would you be comfortable with that in the long term? We understand if there's an emergency, but in the long term, if your budget depended on your ability to draw money out of your credit card, how long could you sustain that at home? If your business didn't have enough customers and so it basically survived by continuing to borrow more money from the bank, how long would it be before the bank showed up and said, okay, pay us back the loan? Well, why is government any different? And what I hope everyone will understand is that if we don't get this under control, the day of reckoning will be upon us. There will come a point where people will no longer lend us money because they don't think we can pay them back. There will come a point when we will have a debt crisis in America. And I want you to understand this debt crisis is not an ideological thing. It's not a Republican versus Democrat thing. It is a simple function of math. If you continue to spend more money than you take in, you are going to have a debt problem or a debt crisis. And that's already having an impact today. It's not just some future threat. It's happening right now. And here's how. What does debt crisis mean? Well, debt crisis means that people are uncertain about the future. And that's not good for creating middle-class jobs. Middle-class jobs are created when people that have access to money, maybe it's their money that they've saved, or maybe it's money that they've earned that they want to reinvest in their business, or maybe it's money that they've borrowed from maxing out a credit card, and they take that money and they use it to start a business, and it works. And the business starts growing and they start hiring more people. That's how middle-class jobs are created. That's how you help the working class. What we need to be doing in government is to make it easier for people to do that. And here's where the debt kicks in. The debt is hurting that, and here's why. People that have access to money, borrowed money, saved money, or whatever, they're afraid to risk that money because they look at Europe and they look at other countries that have a debt problem. They look at Detroit, and what do they see? They see that every time a government confronts a debt crisis, it has to do two things. It has to make draconian reductions in spending, which is very disruptive, and it has to raise taxes dramatically. And neither one of these two things encourage people about the future. So people are afraid to invest in the future until they know what the future is going to look like. And they're not going to know what the future looks like until America deals with its debt problem. So this debt limit debate that we're going to have is an excellent and appropriate opportunity, not just to raise the debt limit summarily, but also to confront this debt problem once and for all, so that our economy can get growing again, so that our middle class can get strengthened again, and so that America can be better off. So that's why I've taken the position that I have. And while I may not convince some of you, I think the vast majority of Floridians and Americans understand that and want to see the same as well. So again, once again, I want to thank all of you that write us and email us, even if you don't agree with us. Your views help us think about these issues more and help us explain to you why it is that we stand on these issues the way we do. So continue to email us and write us, because who knows, maybe next week your email or letter will be the one we read on the air. Until then, I want to thank you for the privilege and the honor of serving you here in Washington, D.C. May God bless all of you. May God continue to bless the great state of Florida. And may God always bless our country, the United States of America.